Hello everyone, my name is Anpota. So today I am going to discuss about unit number 2, the software requirement analysis and specifications. Now the contents that we are going to discuss in this video is the components of an SRS. Now the basic issues an SRS must address are the functionality, performance, design constraints imposed on an implementation, external interface. So let us see one by one. First one is design constraints. So an SRS should identify and specify all such constraints. That is, they are standard compliance. So what is this standard compliance? This specifies the requirements for the standards the system must follow. So there are some standards for which the system has to follow. So that is one of the constraints. So the standards may include report format and accounting procedure. So this procedure should be followed by the SRS. Hardware limitations. The software may have to operate on some existing or predetermined hardware, thus imposing restrictions on the design. That is, there are some limitations of the hardware, and on that hardware only that they have to operate. It includes the type of machine to be used, operating system available on system, language supported, and limits on primary and secondary storage. So if you are developing any project, and the SRS should also specify so on what operating system the product should be available, and also what type of machine should be used, and which all languages should be supported, and also how much storage it should take. So these are the constraints that should be given in the SRS. Next one is functionality. Now functional requirements specify the expected behavior of the system, which output should be produced from the given input. That is, how the system should behave when output is given from the given input. They describe the relationship between the input and output of the system. For each functional requirement, a detailed description of all the data inputs and their source, the unit of measure, and range of valid input must be specified. So if you are using one of the functional requirement, the description of that requirement should be given with all inputs and outputs, and what measure should be taken. All the operation to be performed on input data to obtain the output should be specified. Next one is performance. Now there are two types of performance requirements, that is static and dynamic. Static requirements are those requirements that do not specify the constraints on executing characteristics. Okay. Example, you can take number of terminals to be supported. There is number of files that the system has to process, number of users to be supported. So these are called capacity requirements. So these requirements are not required during the execution of the system. Dynamic requirements specify constraints on execution behavior of the system. Okay. So example, response time and throughput constraints on the system. So response time is the expected time for completion of an operation under specified circumstances. Reliability and fault tolerance. So fault tolerance specify what the system should do if some failure occurs. Suppose if some failure occurs during the working of a product, so what are the measures have to be taken? Okay, so some recovery technique has to be adopted so that system becomes reliable. Hence, system should do something if some failures occur, as they make system more complex and expensive. If something happens to the system, okay, so some recovery technique has to be adopted so that system becomes reliable. Security. Now the requirements place restrictions on use of certain commands, controls, access to data, and provide different kinds of access requirements. For example, require the use of password and cryptographic techniques. Also, the SRS can contain some security requirements by providing requirements about the use of password and cryptographic technique to provide security to the software product. Next one is external interfaces. Now in external interface specification part, all the interactions of the software with the people, hardware, and other software should be clearly specified. Now for the user interface, the characteristics of each user interface of the software product should be specified. Now it includes preliminary user manual be created with all the user commands, screen format, and explanation of how the system will appear to the user, and feedback and error messages. So what is the meaning of external interface is, how the interface should look and what all error messages should come and what all commands should be executed. So all these requirements come under external interface. So for the hardware interface, SRS should specify the logical characteristics of each interface between software product and the hardware components. Now in this video we have discussed about basic issues of SRS. Thank you.